Okay. Yeah. So this is the Patreon content. Curt, you still with me?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Let's
All
get
right.
it.
Now, this is a segment that I created doing the basement, and I like doing it, man. I like asking questions and then asking for a quick response.
Mm.
This is called the speed round. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and you can just give me a quick response on what you think. First question is going to deal with Christian parenting. You did an article on John Piper and his kid being out of whack. He was wilding out, like very rebellious. So what scripture, what truth, what insight have you found to be helpful and encouraging to you and your wife as Christian parents?
Yeah, man. So, I mean, you know, some of the typical ones, fathers do not be embittered, do not embitter your children, Ephesians 6:4. Training your child up in the way they should go. Those proverbs, there's a couple proverbs, don't spare the rod, son the rod. I think we've tried to apply those across the boardwalk. For me, though, what's been less of an actual verse and more of just the reality of Scripture is, and it's just a model that I have, is be a Christian to your kids. Don't just teach your kids about Christianity. And I've seen that happen a lot in people's lives where your kids understand truth, but they see you getting impatient with them, angry at each other, and not asking for forgiveness. Like almost like, well, I don't got to ask you for forgiveness because you my son. And I know a lot of parents carry themselves that way, and we've tried not to do that. Like I've had to say on multiple occasions, boys, please forgive me. I was harsh with you or harsh with your mom.
Yeah.
I didn't honor the Lord. The Scripture tells me I need to be, and I didn't do that. And I sinned against you, the Lord, and please forgive me, boys. I try to be very specific with them and demonstrate. So I've actually, because my middle son has autism, I've kind of slowed. Like he's just starting to really understand things now at 12 years old. So I haven't been as much teaching my kids theology as much as I've been just like trying to be an actual Christian to them. So they don't grow up and say like, man, my dad, I don't believe because my dad was one way at home and one way at church. Excuse me. I would hate that. I would hate that. Would be a travesty to me. So that's what it means to me. It's like, be a Christian. Like I'm talking about when they were little. He didn't know what I was talking about, but I have to ask him for forgiveness. He's 2 years old. Son, please forgive me, Dad. So it's normal for them to see that.
Yeah, my wife posted the other day. She said, normalize parents apologizing to kids. To their kids. And
100%,
like,
bro.
wow, man, definitely.
100%. I mean, I don't know. There's this idea that like, man, I brought you, do as I say, not as I do. And I just don't want to do that.
How much do you think your marriage plays a role in how you parent as well? Like the example that you set for your kids with your marriage.
This may shock you, but I think it's just a different thing. Like, I don't think my kids, obviously they observe us, but my parenting style and what I think about is really disconnected from my marriage, to be honest. I see them as different things. So my kids obviously see their mom and me in the way we relate, but I don't think about that. Like my parenting style is more derived from what I think the Bible calls me to be to my kids and what I want my kids to experience.
Okay. Do you have any girls?
No.
Okay.
I got 3 boys.
Got you. I was gonna say, how do you think that affects the girls? Okay.
Yeah. No, I don't have any girls. If I did it, I might think about it a little differently, but I think of it more as like, what do I want them to experience? And then what do I think the Bible calls us? Because the Bible, let's be honest, as you know this, there's not that many verses on parenting, fam.
No,
there's
specific.
A couple verses, because there's not that. I'm talking about on parenting, not like children.
Not
there's
specific.
Plenty of children are a gift from the Lord, and children obey your parents, but not parenting though.
It's
there's
just
like
general
4 verses, fam.
General principles. You know what I mean?
General principles, man. I think that's what you do. Be a Christian to your kids. I'm just teaching them about Christianity.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. Christian nationalism. Why do you, and this is something that the problem we ran into at the conference here in Lancaster. Why do you think that this term has not been fully defined yet? We've been talking about this for a while now. Why do you think it hasn't been fully defined yet?
Well, a couple reasons. One, I think people have tried to fully define it. I think it hasn't been embraced yet because the people that it's talking about are the market dominant majority culture.
Mm-hmm.
So you're typically talking about predominantly white people and then predominantly conservatives is really what you're thinking. So they're just refusing to accept that. And I think a lot of it. So I think that's one side. It just doesn't. Two, I think that the term it's too. It seems like a response to people disagreeing with critical race theory. It's almost like, we got you on something now, you know.
Right.
And I'm not saying that's true, but it just doesn't. It doesn't feel like it's a genuine observation based on attitudes and actions, but more based on a disapproval of, of people who do not accept certain racial categories or dynamics. And I think third, I think it's just it. I don't think the term has I don't think it's hard to define because it doesn't have a lot of real historical depth. Like people aren't really like me. I walked you through theoletical. That's why I use that, because I can walk you through. And I I was really, because I've been talking a lot. I was trying to really not even hit all the things that I would hit if I were describing that just out of general. So I was able to walk you through reasons why I think that way. And so when you get to the conclusion, even if you disagree, you could be like, I can see why he says that though. It makes sense because of this. I don't think Christian nationalism. Why am I yawning so much right now? I don't think.
Well, we have been podcasting for the last almost 2 hours now.
That ain't why. I ain't sleep that much last night, so usually in the afternoons is when I get hit. Sometimes, especially on a Friday. And I know my kids we let them stay up late on Friday. They stay up till 2 a.m.
Oh my goodness.
So I know it's just going to be a long night, and so I think my body is reacting to knowing it's going to be a long night. Yeah. But I think also the term doesn't have any historical depth, and it's kind of like, and nationalism isn't necessarily seen as a bad thing either. So that's the fourth thing I would say. Like people like, I'm proud to be an American. You go back to Bruce Springsteen, born in the USA. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just people. Nationalism is not. People don't equate that with something wrong.
Right.
So when you hit Christian now, it's like, what? So I love my country and I'm a Christian. What does that mean? It just doesn't. It's like calling a white person honky. It's like it just doesn't have the same historical baggage as nigger does.
Right.
So they're not going to take offense to that and say it in the same way. So that's why I think those are reasons why I think it's just not catching on.
Okay.
Even though people are writing books about it and talking about it, it's just not really sticking.
Right. Episode 2, Black is King Part 2. You mentioned we were talking about. Let me see what we were talking about that episode. We were talking about blacks and politics. We were talking about blacks not being a monolith when it comes to all of these issues. You told me to go back to remind you about a conference that you attended in 2009. And you were like, yo, remind me to go back to this conference in 2009. Do you remember what that was about?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I can't remember what I want to talk about that conference, but I'll tell you about it and maybe it'll come to my mind. So in 2009, it was an all black Reformed pastors conference. And so it was my first time seeing Voddie. He was there. I had just seen Voddie on CNN talking about Obama prior to that. So it was kind of like, oh, this dude was on TV or whatever, on the news. But Thabiti was there. I was there. Tony Carter was there. Ken Jones was there.
You said Thabiti was there too?
Oh, he was there. Yeah. Okay. That's what I was to tell you. So we were in these sessions, and what this was a pastor down there named Ricky. Maybe I should say his last name, because he ended up committing adultery, man, and failed. And Sherrod Burns, I think, was there too. He used to be at John Piper's church. He was like the new black phenom from John Piper's church. He was just a serious looking dude. He looked like he was straight out of, like he was a John Piper disciple. Man, that dude didn't smile at all. It was like this all the time, man. And we were all at this conference, and I remember. So the conference was to honor this one dude who was basically a reformed black dude who's one of the oldest. This guy Ricky wanted to honor him for his faithfulness over the decades and all of that stuff, and it was cool. And when he spoke at his joint was whack. His message and just the stuff he did, it was like, all right, man, But we all gathered for that. But I remember there were times where, so we'd have these not breakout sessions, but these conversations after like the sermon. There was this one time, bro, where I remember I was sitting so I'm sitting here, my man Mike that I passed away, my man Mac, he's beside me. And they got into, Thabiti and Voddie got into like a theological conversation. Like it was like and then bro, and I think it was a couple things. It was the disagreement on the doctrine. And then there was a sense where like Thabiti had just taught at the gospel Together for the Gospel and taught that race is a social construct. And I think by now he had dropped the decline of African-American theology by then. And Voddie was kind of known as like being in a white house homeschooling like movement. He was kind of known for like the black dude and this predominantly. So man, they was talking and they was going back and forth, man, and then all of a sudden like Voddie stood up and Thabiti stood up, and they both like Thabiti's a tall dude, man. He about 6'3", you know what I'm saying? So he ain't tall, but he about 6'3", you know. And Voddie, for some reason, he seemed bigger to me then. But standing beside him in the conference, he wasn't as tall as I remembered. He was about he was about 6 foot like me. So I just remember them two, and everybody be like, "Oh, hold on," and they were all going back and forth because I think Voddie had accused him, Thabiti, of something, and then Thabiti was like, "Man," and I wish I could remember what it was, but it was just a crazy moment to see that, and I was laughing because I'm from the street, so to me, I knew wasn't nobody gonna punch nobody, so it just became kind of comical to me to watch it happen. But it was funny to just see all of us together and arguing over like theology and who's catering to the white man and all that. It was just wild. That wasn't what the conference was about, but those are what the conversations were about in between the sessions. It was kind of wild. So I remember Voddie taught, a couple people taught. Man, it was good. It was fun. It was fun. They didn't do another one though. I remember that joint.
Yeah, somebody said in the Facebook group, the basement, they said they should do another white elephant type conference, but have all sides on the social justice part. I don't know how that would go. I really don't.
Well, I'll be honest with you, bro. I just don't think we have the maturity level to pull that off.
Yeah. No, I get it.
I think people are just like the song I did, Triggered. I think people are so triggered that the maturity level is not even there. Yeah. And this is what I mean. And even in Voddie's book, he set the stage for that to continue, because when you paint the discussion as right truth versus untruth, and truth is your perspective and all that you're saying and the people that you're referencing, and untruth it would be to disagree with you, it's just going to create more immaturity. And by immaturity, I don't mean understanding of doctrine or where verses are, but immaturity in the character that God has called us to.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I think we lack the maturity to be able to do something like that.
We saw how Al Mohler turned up on them when they tried to press him a little bit.
Now it could happen because you also saw us at the conference, and you see when Thabiti accused me of being a slanderer.
Voddie,
it's Thabiti. When Voddie accused me of being a slandering the church, that was a make or break moment. And I remember thinking, what? First of all, I was ready to come right back, because that type of stuff, like I'm not intimidated by him or anybody. So I was like, hold on, fam. But then I was thinking, oh, I'm wrestling with a lot. Like when I said, man, tell me about it. And I sat back and I just looked down and I'm processing like, man, why did this dude say that? Because one, that changes the event now, you know. Now all these people are going to look to you and say, oh, he's right. Like it just changed the event to me. And so I had to recover from that. Huh?
No, I'm thinking back to that moment. That was a crazy moment.
Yeah, you was on stage. It was right there. And I mean, that thing could have went left, bro. If I would have responded a particular way, it would have went left, and it could have ruined an evening. And so I had, in the moment, I got so it kind of, it rocked me a little bit, not because like, oh, I didn't know what to say, or it rocked me because it was the first time that in that meeting that it became personal and moral. Like now you're saying I'm sinning against the church and God, and then you're basically saying I'm sinning right now by saying what I'm saying.
Right.
And I've heard him say, so there was so much going on in my head. I felt like I recovered though. I was able to recover and really just own the night. I mean, I was cracking jokes. I was leading us in laughing at a lot of stuff. But that did affect me for a little bit. I mean, as a matter of fact, even when he was like, what is social justice doing that the church hasn't done? I wasn't ready. I was still struggling with the fact that he said I'm slandering the church. So I wasn't on my game for a few minutes, and I was like, criminal justice. I wasn't able to think through much and Strack was like, man, I should have told you the pathology. And I said, I wish you had, because that would have put me right back. But it was good. I mean, all of to say, but it's possible. That joint could have turned up, and I didn't. I was able to be able to just chill and eventually laugh at it and then keep moving. And so I think largely we like the maturity, man. I think people are just, so if you have the right people up there, it can happen. I don't think, it depends on who those people are. Like, I think I would need to be one of those guys because I bring a humor element to things too, Like, I'm not cracking a lot of jokes in these interviews with you, but you've seen me, you were on stage.
Right.
You see me cracking jokes and getting people laughing and kind of making it more lighthearted because that's just who I am.
Yeah, I agree. Last question, man. Last question. When it comes to the future of the church post-COVID, just make a prediction. You tell me what your thoughts on it. What do you think will be some long-term effects that we see happen to the American church post-COVID, post-pandemic?
So I think the church is going to just get more divided over this issue. I think Voddie's book is going to create the very fault lines that he is describing may happen. I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think what's going to have to happen in the church, what I think is going to happen, is there's going to be persecution. I think the laws are going to change in America. They're going to be in favor of LGBT stuff, which is going to make us, the Christians, have to choose between, or for what they used to say, pick your battles, right? I think the race stuff is not going to be a battle anymore because they're going to be crucifying people because they believe in Jesus on both sides, all sides of the fence. So I think persecution at this point is going to have to be what purifies the church, because I think that the Lord has allowed us to get so nonsensical in our reaction to things that I just don't think that we have within us the maturity by itself to heal from this. I think it's going to require persecution to the point where we realize, look, man, we fighting over dumb stuff. We need each other right now. We brothers in the Lord, man. Who cares later for that? We need to deal with this. They coming after us, and we want to stand in solidarity with brothers, because they ain't gonna just come after one group of believers, one segment or one theological, ideological, framework. They're coming after everything. Yeah. And I think that's what's going to be. Yeah, it's going to have to happen.
I'm sure that there's some churches in Canada that were not totally hand in hand before the persecution started happening, but now that they see
they're together, and now they're really together for the gospel.
Arrested. Right? Yeah.
Now you're really together for the gospel. See, before we were willing to meet together for the gospel, but now we're willing to die together. And that's what's needed.
Yeah, that's different, man.
It's different, bro. It's gonna be different. I think that's what the Lord's gonna do. That's why I'm not blown away by a lot of this stuff. I'm like, all right, man, all right. I'm not blown away from
how it goes, how it turns out, right?
Yeah, because when I think about, because look, I'm confident the gates of hell will not prevail, right? I'm confident.
Right.
So then what's the point that I'm thinking of? What are we worried about then if the gates of hell will not prevail? It's like, okay, well, here's the real issue. What's God doing then? Why is he letting this happen? So, okay, what is he, and I answer that question primarily by what is he exposing? Well, what is he revealing? What are people doing and saying that are and you think about, wow, people are tripping right now.
Yes,
and you realize that, wow, when it's all said and done, I think a lot of these things are happening to expose the utter lovelessness, the utter disconnection from the lovelessness that God from the love that God requires. It is a lovelessness that characterizes the evangelical church. that displeases God. There has been no consequences for slavery or Jim Crow that we know of, that we can clearly say, man, the Lord really leaned on the church. We're too far spread out. So that particular stuff, I think, is what the Lord's doing. And we're just going to have to be like, wow, we're going to go through it. The Lord isn't about preserving American values or conservative. God's not a Republican. He's not a Democrat. He's holy, and he's called us to be that way. And as he's revealing to us how unholy we actually are, he's going to let persecution come. I think we're going to be like Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Like, it's just going to be, man, listen, this is who we are. This is who we are. We're going to be righteous in the land of the unrighteous. And I think that's what we have been for real, but I think it's going to be more pronounced.
I agree. We're going to see it, man. Well, that was my last question for this right here. You guys have been great. Thank you to the Patreon supporters. There's a bunch of things that I hope to do. So just make sure that you keep on supporting, let people know about what's happening over here in the Saint Life Podcast. God bless y'all.